Affinity Xtra, be extra.
Oh yeah, everyone's going that edgy vibe anyway. So first of all, I was gonna just introduce things in and get things started, and I'm gonna introduce my guest for this show. First and foremost, hi, my name is Roger Moore here. We are on Affinity Xtra. We're here to be extra. We celebrate gospel music of black origin, and if you're listening right now or you're watching on YouTube, please guys follow us, download the apps, and do whatever you do. Subscribe. AffinityXtra.com is our website, and we're here to celebrate gospel music of black origin, but also at the same time we're utilizing this platform to have real issues, real conversations about issues in our community from a Christian perspective, which I personally feel that as a body we are not talking enough about, and I think it's very important to have these conversations and to be able to be able to reason them and let the public hear the Christian voice. Yeah, because a Christian voice is important, and there's no point me moaning. Everyone who knows Roger will give it when it moans, but it's about me also taking action, and that's what it's all about. Right, I'm going to bring my guest in right now. Today's subject it's about the great report that we had this week, which was fantastic, but actually said a lot of things. Everyone's like, yes, we got rid of BAME, yeah. And then in the next minute they go, hold on a second, are you saying that institutional racism is a myth? But there's a lot more context to it. It was a 258 page, which I admittedly wasn't able to press play on a device and audio. There wasn't an audio version of it. That was very clever, you know what I mean? So we just did loads of responses towards that. But either way, I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy with certain statements from it, and I think that it's a conversation which I've had over the past number of months, and speaking to black and white people who can't see systemic racism. And sometimes, you know what, we keep moaning people that you don't, and moaning about Candice Owens and all these guys saying what they need to say, but we can also put it out there on platforms, what we see, what we feel, and how we feel is the way forward. Whether you take it on board, it's up to you, but this is our voice and this is conversation. But first and foremost, I'm going to introduce my guest. I'm going to start off with Beresford Dawkins. I'm going to work my way around, because everyone says when on Zoom, they always say they work their way around, and Beresford Dawkins in the top left. So I'm going to work my way around. Now, let me just make sure, bro. Is your voice okay? Can you hear me okay, bro?
Yes, good afternoon, Roger. Really good to be here.
Yeah, man, blessings, bro. Just quickly introduce yourself, introduce what you do in the gospel scene, as well as the fact that basically what you do also in your corporate work, why it's important, I feel, that you should be in this meeting.
Okay, so how long's the program?
That's what I'm saying. So you have literally 2 minutes. Go on. Bring it in.
Okay, no problem. So, first of all, really glad to be here, and I think it's quite a luxury and a privilege to be on a 24-hour gospel program talking about issues around inequalities and race. So that in itself is a massive thing, and I'm sure we'll get into that. So I'm Beresford Dawkins. I've been around Pentecostal church for about 40 years, probably a bit longer if you include Elim as part of Pentecostal movement. So originally born out of Church of God of Prophecy. That's where my parents and my background, growing up in the 60s. Been with Elim Pentecostal Church now for the last 10, 11 years, and I'm a Christian, and I love my faith. I'm currently studying theology at Queen's College. I have worked in two of the biggest organisations in Europe, i.e. Birmingham City Council, worked in them for 30 years, and I've currently been working with the NHS for about 11 years. And so you talk about my history with gospel music. I'm a fan, I'm a musician. I've been a promoter for probably best part of 30 years as well. I don't know how I fit it all in. I've been married for 35 years this year. Wow. Got 2 beautiful children and also 3 grandchildren. So I love my faith, I love my life, I love my community. And when I talk about my community, I don't just mean community of colour. I love Birmingham, the city that I live in. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of everything that we've achieved in the time that we've been here. So I think that's why I've been invited on this program.
Yeah, Yeah, that's
I'll
brilliant.
stop
No, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Dave, you're next, mate. You're right there. Brilliant.
Good afternoon.
Good
And
afternoon,
good
sir.
evening, wherever you might be joining us today. So yeah, my name's David Gibbs. It's always difficult for me to answer this question. Where do I start? So now I'll echo some of Beresford that I've been married now. We'll be coming on 35 years this year. We too have 2 children. So we went to school together, my wife and I. So she's listening in the background. So she's my biggest fan and critic at the same time. I'm a church pastor, which I have been now for 20 odd years for an evangelical church. But I'm not going to name them. I might think that they might, so I don't even put them in that position because I'm not going to say anything they don't know that I think already. I know Beresford from, I'm a hospital lay manager with Birmingham Solihull Foundation Trust, and we're also studying in the same place as well. So I'm studying theology, doing my master's in theology at the moment. And I do a number of community things. I like to be involved in the community and support the community. And a lot of the things I do them because I'm a black man. And there's very few of us, unfortunately, in a lot of these spaces. So that's why I do things. So, yeah. In regard to gospel music, I am definitely a fan of gospel music, but I'm also a great critic of it as well.
Wow. Okay.
It definitely has a role to play, and and maybe we'll discuss that on another occasion. So I'm pleased to be here. I'm glad we're carrying on the conversation, and this week just seems so appropriate to have it in light of the report.
Sweet. So, Sarah, you are next, sis.
Yeah, I literally feel like I don't even need to be on this panel. I shouldn't be on this panel. The wealth of experience between Beresford and David just kind of knocks me out of the park. But I'm really humbled and thankful that you've brought me onto this panel, Roger. I have had the pleasure of meeting Beresford in Birmingham when he invited me graciously, and he was so hospitable, him and his family, to sing in Birmingham at the show that they host. I'm hoping that when COVID is over, we get the chance to have it again. I can imagine that hasn't happened in a while.
Yeah. It was Gospel Central at the
Gospel
time.
Central, yes, in Birmingham.
Yeah.
These are the things that we really need in terms of the gospel scene, and it's lacking now with COVID and everything. But I am married with 2 kids. I'm a recording artist, a singer, songwriter, worship leader, and I recently released a song for Easter called Victory. I initially thought that was what Roger was calling me for a few days ago. I'm thinking, is it my song? Does he really like my song? And then it was like, we want you to come on and talk about racism. And I can imagine you've done that because I also recently hosted an online panel, which I had the privilege of having David on as a guest. For the entire month of March, I had a strong leading to talk about racism within the Christian community. Every Sunday evening we were live, and I had guests from the UK, the US, Australia and South Africa, because I was quite keen to explore the experiences and the challenges, and equally hopefully the success stories from all these different regions, and kind of shine the light on those. And it was really, really enlightening for me, and hopefully I can bring some of those learnings to today's discussion, which I suspect is why Roger's got me on here, because looking at Beresford and David's CV on this topic, I daren't even speak a word, to be honest. So thank you so much for having me.
No problems. And I think that some of it's key there is you mentioned about the conversations that you had over the past 4 weeks, and there's a lot of conversations, a lot of angles that you received from there, and at the end of the day, so you've learned a lot from just that process itself, different and just to give context of things, when I was when I was at school, racism was taught to me. I was the only black child in the whole school. My family was the only one, not the usual scenario, but the scenario that I was in, which is great. My parents took me out to the inner city into the suburban areas, faced petitions and all this business about moving in and all this business. But they got us into the school, great, fantastic. But that one real important thing was that they talked about the struggle for a black man from a perspective of apartheid in South Africa and the southern states of America. That's when they talk about injustices towards black people. It was never in the context of the Caribbean. Yeah. And it's interesting because that's why I'm having mercy with a lot of people my age who are white, because if that's how you're educated, you would actually think that there's nothing there. So I was educated alongside a load of white people, professionals are going, we don't get it. But if you are But anyway, that's the whole goal. That's going into somewhere. But it just gives you. So that's why it's important, Sis, that your perspective from South Africa, hearing the guys in America. These guys are different journeys to ourselves, you know. And West Africa's a different journey. East Africa's a different journey when it comes to colonialism. So it's really special. But we need to hone in into the UK because this is the season for Black people to come together and actually move forward now together. Whether you're from West Africa, whether you're from Jamaica heritage, whether from different heritages, we need to come together and have a collective move forward, respect each other's cultures and backgrounds, and move forward. Now, let me pose a question out now, guys. You know, we had the report now that came through. I was like, I must admit, I must have went into a dark room somewhere and screamed, because it's like it undoes a lot of. It keeps on when you're getting somewhere and you feel you get somewhere. It felt like it just undone a lot of things. Now, when you heard, because you know the news has got a really cheeky way. When you know the media will put out something a certain way where it's not quite as bad as it looks. Now, I'm gonna just ask out. Anyone can come forward. How did you respond when you saw the news when you woke up? I think it was Wednesday morning and. It was like Tuesday we're celebrating, they're getting rid of BAME. It was like, yeah, we got rid of BAME, you know what I mean, and whatsoever. Then the next day, you heard that, hold on a second, you just got rid of BAME. And then you're bringing in this whole load of baggage saying that all what you've raised is not so much a load of rubbish, but that's how the media portrayed it, yeah? So that's the key thing what I said. Does anyone want to jump in here?
Well, I'll start off. Always regard the news with a degree of suspicion. Okay, that's my sort of start point. And especially knowing government and how government works, you always think if they're leaking something, what's really going to come? All right.
Okay.
So my standpoint with government is if they're leaking this bit now, then the report has got to be really bad. Right. That was my sort of start point. So I'm waiting for the information to come out. So because if that's the best thing that they can leak, that's going to be in the report. I thought, oh dear. All right.
Wow.
So when I eventually heard the little bits that were coming out and then sort of scanned what came out, and I still haven't read all of the 258 pages of it, but I've gone through various sections of it. I thought, like you, Roger, I went into a very dark place and I had to call a few of my friends to say, I am mad today. And this is why. So, disappointed, but unfortunately not surprised.
Wow. Okay. Who was coming next?
Go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, I was just going to say, when I first saw the headline, as David has said, I tend to take everything in the news with a pinch of salt just because I don't go on a rant based on hearsay, really. So I was quite keen to, and for me, it was the statement that there was no institutional racism in the UK that stood out for me in the report. And I was wondering, could it be that we're talking about different things here? Because I couldn't agree with, I mean, there were some really good headlines that came out from the reports, which kind of showed progress over time. But that one thing kind of stood out to me. And I was wondering, could there be a different definition to institutional racism than what we know? And it's interestingly enough, when I had the sessions over the month of the Stronger Together sessions over the month of March, every week I made my guests tell me what racism meant to them, because I was quite keen to know that we were talking about the same thing. And I find that institutional racism has many different definitions. And so that was one thing I didn't quite agree with. And I have a strong feeling that what we understand institutional racism to mean could be a complete different thing to those who carried out that report. That's kind of how I see it. Because if it's based on what I understand it to mean, it's alive and breathing in the UK, but I could be completely wrong.
Cool.
Yeah. From my point of view, again, a 258-page document, certainly in my world, you can't read it overnight, and you certainly can't digest it overnight. So the fact that so many people have commented on it, I find that really quite concerning, that people should be just calling out on the headlines and throwing the headlines into the out there for the public to grab. So I'm taking my time, like with most reports, and I can go back as far as we can go back David Lammy. We can go back as far as the Doreen Lawrence report recently, and then if we think of the one that I forget his name now, that put out that there was institutional racism way back after the Stephen Lawrence report. The Stephen Lawrence report talks about it. So if we're going to talk about institutional racism, we have to understand that back then it was probably overt. Now we're talking about covert. And therein for me lies some of the problem. Because it's covert, it's not as easy recognizable. So when we talk about institutional racism, when we just throw it out there to pick on that part of the report, then that's where we're getting so much disparity, because actually, if it's covert, it's very, very difficult to describe and to share. And that's the challenge, I think. And I think, again, I have to commend the program that I don't think this is just a one program discussion.
Correct.
This needs to be continued with various different voices. And I think the church has never really addressed this on any level, apart from saying, when we experience issues of race, and I want to talk about race relations and including the title, folks, there's an issue with how we relate together as race. And that's the issue. And the church has never really addressed that. All it's done is says, right, we're going to have a black church over here and the white church is going to be over there. I don't know how helpful that's been, especially now when we're looking in 2021. And if you were to take that into the corporate world, into the mainstream world, like David said, some of us are strategically placed in our positions, and we've managed to navigate through some of those challenges. And those are some of the discussion that we should be having, because actually, guess what? The issues of race and race relations are not going to go away. And it's about the navigation for me, and it's about how we come together and have these real conversations. Because you know what? Guess what? The church has got some institutional problems. The church has got some systemic problems. And again, we very rarely talk about them in the way that we should, intelligently, articulately, so that people can grow. So I'll pause there.
No, that's brilliant. I know Sarah's passionate about the articulate ourselves in the correct manner from a conversation. And I think it's real important. Like we've seen valid point, guys, and I just want to define this. I got this definition of what, just in case anyone wondering what it is exactly. So the words it says here, basic institutional racism, also known as systemic racism, so both of the same thing, is a form of racism that is embedded as a normal practice within society or an organization. Yeah, and it leads to discrimination in different areas and whatsoever. So if we're looking at that, I'm afraid that within the UK or the Commonwealth, I would say that is evidence. I geeked out on Sarah's podcast, you know what I mean, and she's laughing because I was proper nerding it out. I was watching like boom, right as soon as it was live on YouTube, I was on it, and somebody said that they're in South Africa, and 98% of the population is black, if not even higher, but yet their desire to sing hill songs. You know what I mean? And no offense, man. No, if you want to get the guitar out, just do 2 chords a session. Great, do your thing. You know what I mean? But the desire to go Hillsong in their head, in the back of their head, they're just dying for that, thinking that that's superior to what they're producing themselves. If that's not self-loving, or is that their mindset's been shaped to think like that what is white is better. A tough conversation, but is that part of a produce of institutional racism within the church, or within? That's as a result of it for me, that people are just not dying for a type of music which is not respecting of themselves. That's how I see it. Not saying itself is institutional racism, but I'm saying that this is the produce of it, that people are still having to break through them shackles mentally. And I find as an Afro-Caribbean child, just speaking to people, it's like our community is just getting used to the fact that basically we have African descent. You know what I mean? So there's certain things I've been taken from us. Now, I want to look into some of the seeing your people's here's lived experiences. I can talk about my experiences of racism, but where have you seen it? You know what I'm saying? And I'm going to hit off with Beresford first, because you've probably seen it in a number of places there. But I'm going to go hard on Beresford still. It said, if you can give us an example, if somebody said to you, give us an actual lived example about where you've seen it in front of your face. Because it's great seeing stats, and I can pull out stats 5 times this, 40% here, 30% there. What's your lived experience of that? And how did you respond to that, and how did you deal with that?
Okay. Again, you know, it's a very prickly subject, and it's a very complex one, and we shouldn't underestimate that. And that's why I would encourage people to read the report properly, and get themselves informed, because it's an important time and it's an important discussion. So I said earlier that I've worked with it for the City Council. You know, it's the biggest council in Europe, and I started there as a 21-year-old, right? And left there when I was in my sort of mid-50s. And enjoyed my time. And I experienced racism, discrimination, prejudice, you call it whatever you want. And in all of my roles, and there were several of them, you know, I experienced it. But I think the one I'd share is one where it wasn't to my face direct, because I think, like I said, I don't think racism is never going to go away. It's about how we navigate through it, through the experience. Because I always say as well, I've lived through 2 riots. So 1981 and in 1985, 1985, I saw the streets that I lived on in Los Angeles burn, right? And burn down Babylon is a thing that we all went through. But I think we have to move on from that as well, in terms of how we navigate through some of the challenges that we experience. And I always remember that I was in an office, an open office with about 200 people. And in my absence, someone took a photograph of me, which was up on my, in the office, and again, an open office. And I wasn't in the office at the time, but they pulled down my photo and danced all over it, stepped on it in a way that someone shared with me after. And that will never ever leave me, in terms of that image, and all the office would have seen it. Not many of them shared it with me. Somebody told me, you know, why it was done, how it was done, and it was done in a very disparaging way, simply because I was performing in the workplace in a way that I always encourage us to do as a people. Whatever is happening around us, we must perform. There's some integral issues that our parents, and principles that our parents taught: always work hard, always perform. And you know, we say do better than the next person, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 times. And when we're growing up, and when you hear that as a young child, you kind of laugh at it, and you think, why do I have to be, you know, 6 times better than the next person? And it was at that moment I realized what that meant. And because I was performing and performing well, and I'm glad to say I'm still performing well, you know, it comes with a lot of issues. So I think my point is, it's how, again, you'll hear me talk about navigation, support, and performing in the workplace. It's not about underperforming. We have to perform. So whatever role we have, we must do it well. I think it was Martin Luther, sometimes, if you're going to be a road sweeper, be the best road sweeper you can possibly be. And that's the point. It's actually, you know, I'm in this role. How am I going to make a difference? What is my legacy going to be in that space, regardless of the challenges that I will face? So that's how I would contextualize it, because actually looking back at the report in the way that we're looking at it, it's helpful. But again, it's about understanding that you will face this, and the difference between overt and covert institutional racism.
That's really sweet. Right, I could go to Dave, but I'm gonna go on to Sarah. Yeah, and because obviously you're not coming from the same but kind of backgrounds as Beresford, so I want to see what you've seen and maybe what has been highlighted to you over the podcast that you've had.
There's been a lot of different experiences, I have to say, because I had a really diverse audience, diverse in terms of background, diverse in terms of age, diverse in terms of lived experiences as well. But one thing that definitely rang through is that it's kind of been a spectrum from overt to kind of subtle racism, racist comments, derogatory, comments from colleagues. And to a degree, it would appear, probably linking into what Beresford has said around, you're performing, you're doing really well, that there is a low expectation from us for whatever reason. So when you do outperform, there's either envy or hatred. And then when the hate comes, then the racism shows itself. It's like, I never expected you as a black person to do so well or to know so much. And so, automatically they go into envy mode, and envy shows the real monster, really. So I think that is part of the problem. But I think also kind of leaning into the question on what institutional racism is, I kind of like that you've pulled out the definition, about, systems and structures being set up to discriminate against other people such that it's a deliberate thing. Based on that definition, one could argue that whilst institutions themselves are actually frowning upon deliberate discrimination against people, because I guess that's probably where the reports came from, but I guess it probably wasn't as crystal clear as it could have been, is that whilst institutions in the UK definitely do not encourage people to discriminate against, whether your religion, your sex, your gender, your your racial background, it's frowned upon strongly. So I would like to think that on that premise, you could argue that there is a sort of system that doesn't encourage that. However, it's down to the individuals. And so I feel like this is a thing that still happens at a personal level. I remember there was a time I was in a training at work for females. It's a women's sort of training to equip the next set of leaders and things like that. And I'm usually the only black woman in the room, funny enough. It's really annoying, but it is what it is, I guess. And that's why I try to mentor black females in the workplace when I find them. And one of the comments that was made by one of the facilitators was, oh, it's really hard. And she was talking about ways to get to the next level, kind of tactful things, tricks in the book, basically. Things like making sure you know where the next opportunities are. Don't wait for the adverts to be put out for vacancies. Talk to people, know where the opportunities are coming up. And then she said something which has stayed with me forever. She said, because the truth is, if you're a woman, it's harder. And if you're black, you're effed. And I was like, wow. And I was the only black woman in the room. And whether it was insensitive, whether it was a stupid thing she said, whether she didn't understand the gravity of her words, that stuck with me, because indirectly what she's saying is it's hard for you to progress as a woman. It's even harder as a black person. But the fact that she used that word, I was like, wow. So the expectation is that you're not going to go far if you're black. And so I suspect that when you do outshine, that's when the monster comes out. That's when the racist in the individual, as opposed to the racist in the institution, I'd like to say, comes out. That will probably be my stance.
Yeah, and just on that point, we're great at writing policies. Again, Birmingham City Council, when you see some of their policies, you would wonder how in heaven's name is there racism within that. And I think that's the point. The policy documents say all the right things, whether it's around hate crime, whether it's about racism, whatever it is. It's very well documented in terms of covering themselves, and same within the NHS. Our policies are very well written around equalities, but how we implement them is another thing. And again,
I think he's gone mute for a second. I think he gone mute there, Beres.
Sorry, hence the institutional racism. Sorry.
No, that's a fantastic point. Dave, do you want to come? Sarah, thanks for that point, because that's giving us a little bit of a twist angle there still. Yeah, Dave, you want to go and say?
I'm just going to carry on Beresford's point just a little bit. The church has the best policies about being anti-racist, but yet most of the Christian church, the Western church, is racialized and prejudiced. Its doctrines are, that's where they come from. So you can have the best policies in the world, but if people are not implementing them and then not held accountable for it, or people live in denial. You're never going to change anything. So the church should be a model for how this works, but it isn't to a large degree. Now, there are pockets of it that are doing great work and some individuals who are doing great work, but as an institution, it's failing. Okay. So that's where I would start from. Institutional racism. We had a clear definition from McPherson. Okay. So when you have a group of people now whose remit is to start with, the person who set up the commission says there is no such thing as institutional racism, and then the head of the commission says it doesn't exist, what other conclusion can you find if that's where you're starting from? So then you get your cronies in to reinforce what you already believe. So it's confirmation bias. So, that's my view on the take. Now, I can't remember what your question was, Roger, after all of that.
No worries. Just about you just give us a living example of.
I'll give you a few examples, sort of bookends as well, because I'm a bit older than some of your listeners probably. But back in the 70s and 80s, when I used to play football, used to play for an all-black team.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll do that today.
And as soon as you came out and stepped on the pitch, man, you could see, even though the referee was wearing black, you thought he'd have some solidarity with you. None. Okay. You knew that decisions would go against you, penalties would be denied, and all of that. And then you get chants and comments all the way through. All right. Same in school. You can't swim. You got an afro. You can't head the ball. All of that stuff. All right. So this is the 70s and 80s. And then we're surprised in the 2020s when Black Lives Matter said this still exists. But we thought we dealt with it. Well, no, you didn't. It morphed and it changed. And you thought because it gone quiet, it gone away. No, it hasn't. All right. So, those are some of the experiences. So from sporting, education, I've experienced it. In the business world, again, and I could give numerous examples, but I'm not going to name the organizations. But in various places where I've worked, I have been equally, if not more qualified than most of the people who came in and got promoted. Okay. And oftentimes I would be the one who would teach and train them, right? And then they would leapfrog over me and go up the ladder, and I'm still left behind. So they would love me on their teams. Okay. That any difficult cases, strangely, would come to me to deal with. Any difficult people, when they'd failed everywhere else, suddenly I was the one who could help them. Okay, and if I couldn't help them, then they knew nobody could. So I'm praising myself just a little bit. But all of these things happen all the time. And there's a particular example where there was an opportunity came up, right, for a promotion for a particular post. And literally, this is not an exaggeration, literally, I was one of 4 possible candidates who could apply for this job. I was not seen. I mean, visibly not seen. My credentials, my qualifications were not even recognized or known. And yet I excelled in all of the areas they were looking for. Yeah. So these are the things that happen all the time and continue to happen, because this is this year, this one actually. All right. So this happens all the time. Yet we have these policies, and they'll make their statements, and it frustrates me. We want to make sure this doesn't happen again. We take all issues of racism seriously. Right, and then we have a whistleblower policy and blah 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 blah. And as a black person, if you blow the whistle, who gets into trouble? You do. All right. And again,
the classic lessons learned,
not the issue.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers your question and it gives you a few examples.
No, 100%. No, that's fantastic, because I think that you talked about football. Just 2 weeks ago, I play in the Christian Football League. I run don't want to sound braggy, but I run that and play in the best team. We just played football today. We're all black team. We came in the Christian League, but we are now, this is in the Christian League in inverted commas. When we first came in there in around about 2001, blatantly, one of our players got called a monkey in front of the referee, and the referee said, play on, and we all stood there going, what on earth? One of my guys, he just unfortunately come out.
Christian League, do you have non-Christians who play, or is everyone?
Yeah. Well, we have non-Christians. They encourage non-Christians to play.
I was going to be scared for a second.
But the thing is, you cannot swear on the pitch. Yeah, you cannot swear on the pitch at all. You get sent off if you get swear. But yet, if you make if you can abuse people. So I pulled him up the other day. I said, listen, guys, it's been a year. No one's called me. I got players that I triggered. We're going to come into the pitch. If you're not, what is your stance? Yeah, my stance is, Yes, you'll get sent off for swearing still, which is fine. I'm cool with that. Yeah, but if the player calls me a monkey, it's down to the referee, who's above the age of 60, who is coming from a period where that's just normal language towards black people, to decide if he's going to send off, which would be the white player. So it took for us to bring out a police officer to actually correct them and say, you know what? Okay, don't do nothing about it. It's a hate crime. So what the worst thing the league has done now has got me in contact with the police. So anything happens, I'm going to tell my players, don't worry about it. We're going to process a hate crime, against us. And I think that if the police officer said, I want people to know this. You can't go around abusing people, you know. But the joke is the FA is saying, let's kick out racism. Yes. But yet you can racially abuse a player and it'll have to go through police to get sorted. That don't make no sense. You know what I'm saying? So that's and that is institutional racism there as well for me, because the system has been set up not to protect the black players. As everyone, you know what I mean. So I can go on about football like there's no crazy, because it's all in there. But something I want to raise up, sorry Dave, is I'm passionate. I'm going to be unpacking this subject over a number of months, because at this rate we're going to have things going on, and I think the Christian voice has to react towards certain things and give a positive spin to it. Now, Sarah's finished the series with the Christian about Christianity and uniting us together. But if the institutions, the people are willing, but are the institutions ready for a real coming together of people? Because we can have the most willing people, but I sat down with my pastor and said, listen, it's about education. Are you willing to sit down and listen to our journeys? Are you willing to sit down and listen to the real story? Because you have been educated something different. And on top of that, I said to my friends this week, I says, if they changed let's be real, as much as we don't see white Jesus too often now, let's be real, white Jesus is all over the UK, that's their perception of, you know what I mean? But if you switch the button and changed every Jesus to between an African and Asian calling brother, or religion, and it said there's no white people, it will be a struggle in this country to do that, because it's just been set up in a way which is Eurocentric, which is not really fair, because there's other elements to the church in the early years. So looking at the church, the sentiments, some of the ideas that I heard in the last podcast that Sarah had, I'm looking at change on a mass level. Will it be possible, or are we going to wave our hands and say, you know what, this will never change as long as the racism, but the church should be the trailblazer for race relations? But when you look at it, City Council is way further ahead. NHS is way further ahead. You know what I mean? Work is way ahead. And in church, there's pockets of success, but it's not good enough. That's where I'm at, guys. I don't know if you want to hit me back at that, because that's where a lot of my guys, people are struggling. And the black I would have to come from the Afro-Caribbean experience of my friends up in Birmingham. A lot of them are struggling to go back into the church institution. They're struggling, and people are marginalized and says they don't know what they're talking about. They're not with Jesus and whatever. And they're struggling because every time you ask a question, it gets shut down. Anytime you want to, it's just like, you actually don't care. George Floyd did it like this. Oh, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, do you know what that represents? But we've seen so many men walk out after shooting 8 people. But yet when a black man just trips over, he gets his neck broken. It's just like... But anyway, that's just me. How, and the church is important. I've been in church all my life. I ain't done that time. I'm plus 9 months. I was born and bred in church and whatsoever. So I'm passionate about the church, dealing with this subject and getting there. How have you guys seen how we could navigate through this, all the experiences that you've seen, or what things we have to kind of get across? Because I'm not going to let this go.
And you shouldn't, and neither should any of us. I'll come at this from a couple of perspectives. One is, I think COVID, right, and putting aside sort of the health side of it for a moment, as serious as that is, but I think COVID for me is providing the great reset for the church, also for society in general, but for the church, and saying the way you've been operating for, let's say, since the Reformation, for the last 500 years, has not worked. Okay, the church has gone into decline. It's become irrelevant. Okay, you know, all of that. America or Britain were never a Christian society anyway, really, if we get down to it. But anyway, the church has been in decline. Yeah, now there are pockets of growth everywhere. So I think he's saying your institution has not worked. I'm going to close it down for a bit. Give you time to reflect and to be refreshed, and then to engage in what we're called to in a new way. And now what people are seeing is, you know, you talked about some of your friends. They're saying, actually, we've got choice here in how we engage. We've got choice when we attend, where we attend, who we attend with. Now, if the church doesn't learn some of these lessons and see what's really important to people, it will become more irrelevant. So using my church again as an example, after the death of George Floyd, the response was absolute silence. It was deafening. So I, you know, was one of those people who was triggered by it. You know, it's coming up to a year now since that happened, and still they're quiet about it. But I had to call them out, even in my pain. I had to call them out on it. Then there was some knee-jerk stuff, right, that they did, and then, oh look, we've sorted it now. We've solved the problem. Thank you very much. Let's now go back to business as usual. And I keep saying, no. We've got to come back to this. So now, you know, I'm the villain of the piece because I keep bringing up racial matters and they just want to talk about Jesus. And I'm saying, but Jesus would deal with this issue. Jesus wouldn't be afraid to preach about it, but yet you are. And when I preach about it, now I'm called political. And I'm saying people are suffering out there. You know, people are triggered by this, and we're called to be people of compassion and empathy and caring. And yet we want to remain quiet and say, you know, that in Jesus, there is neither Jew nor Greek, black nor white. We quote these scriptures. Yeah. It's just Jesus doesn't see color. Well, you know what? He sees me and I'm black. Yeah. And he was probably black as well. So
yeah. Wow.
So there's all these issues that we're looking at.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No.
So yeah. So I've got a little post debate, but I want my colleagues to have a chance as well.
Yeah, man. Beresford, you want to jump in?
Again, I think in this time of reflection, I think as a staunch attender of church for most of my life, me and my family, yeah, it's a time to look at you know what church does. Unfortunately, I've worked within the criminal justice. I've worked within mental health. I understand the community that I serve, and I have to say I'm not sure if the church does in the same way. And again, that's me being critical of the church in a theological way, if you like. I think it's really important for us to step back as a church. And when you look at the vulnerability within our communities, you have to ask yourself, how is the church impacted? And until we can respond to some of those issues around criminal justice, mental health, education, the economic issues, you know, this isn't stuff that we don't know. This is historical challenges. And I think COVID has just put a magnifying glass on that. And it's really honed in on actually, what are we actually doing with our communities? When is church going to become community and family again? We've become too institutional. Our buildings have become a place of safety for a certain type of individual. This whole, I'm going to be critical is, I don't know how we have black and white church. No, and I can see that rising itself even in the pandemic. Oh, we've got a black church over here, we've got a white church over here, and that looks nothing like Jesus's analogy, nothing like Jesus's definition of what the church should be. So those are some of the things, and that's why I say it's great that we're having this conversation over a period of an hour. I think we need to continue having these discussions, because our young people don't fit into anything that we're describing in terms of church. And as you know, a father and a grandfather, I'm concerned, and I want my grandson and my granddaughters to live in a world that they can express themselves as Jesus would have them do. And I'm not sure if those models are there.
Wow, crazy. I'm gonna add a twist for Sarah. You know, I'm gonna add the twist.
As you do.
You know what I'm saying? You know, as I do, man. You know, we want to look at you know, how we can progress things and what you're seeing, but now as an artist, as a gospel artist, do you feel it? Do you have responsibility today in the UK? Now I have my opinions about it. Now, unfortunately, I can't get up there and sing. Well, could do these days. But added some auto tune on there, and away I go,
right.
man. A bad boy, man. It's got and the next minute I can make a hit, man. Yo. Anyway, but I'm not gonna go there. But as an artist, looking at this situation, does it trigger you? Do you feel compelled? I know you've got a mission in your heart, but do you? Because I don't see it a lot. But do you, as an artist, is there tugging to maybe use your voice through your gifting on these subjects? Because I don't see it a lot from UK acts, but I'm just wondering, what's your take on this? And personally, I'm not saying it's all down to Sarah. Sarah needs to do a song all about Black Lives Matter. But as an artist, I just want to get your mindset. When you see this, does this trigger you to go, I need to address this through my creativity? Yeah.
I think there's a number of things and there's a number of ways. First things first is there tends to be this expectation from whether you're an artist, an actor, or you have a platform of any kind. There's this unspoken expectation that you get involved in any and everything that happens, whether it's political or circumstantial. And I kind of want to debunk that, because not everyone who's a creative is actually comfortable with talking publicly about things. Some people just want to be creative, you know, do their art, put their stuff out and just go back into a cave somewhere, because the average creative is actually an introvert, which I am. So the fact that you've been blessed with a gift sometimes is like, oh God, I need to do this, but really I'd rather be reading a book and hiding under a blanket. That's the reality. So I do kind of want to start by just speaking maybe on behalf of the majority of creators to say, to expect that every creative comes out if there's a protest or there's a demonstration and just comes on board and voices their opinion, whether it's for or against. Just people just, you know, just keep cool and just know that that's probably not going to be the case for every single person. That said, given that I have been blessed with a gift and a platform, I try as much as possible to have a balanced view, because at the end of the day, we do know that there's always different sides to a story. And if we don't have the facts, I'm the kind of person I love to know the facts before I jump on anything and say anything. So I really like to take my time to do my research, to be very acquainted with the topic or the issue at hand before I even voice any opinion. So for example, with the recent report, I had my initial responses, but that was based on the very limited information that was available. And so I then went on to have a read of the synopsis of the report, which I actually put on my Facebook. So things like putting the right information out also are things that I feel like I can do. Sharing the truth about a situation is what I feel like I can do, because there's a number of people watching and reading and following. So having read the synopsis of the report, I was like, okay, this makes sense. And where I had a question mark, I also put the question mark. I think I even tagged David on the post. I wanted to see what he was going to say. But I literally took that upon myself to put the truth about that particular situation out there. And then people can make of that what they will. You know, and in terms of my creativity, my gift, my voice, my music, I actually have a song that kind of doesn't speak specifically to racism, but it speaks to the fact that we're all different and there's beauty and strength in our diversity. It's called Special. I don't know if you've heard the song on my first album, and it just talks about everyone is different. Each of us, we're unique in who we are. We're a masterpiece in our own, you know, in the way that God has created us. And if we look around, we'll see beauty, diversity, because everyone is special. And knowing that I'm a Christian, everyone probably expects you to sing praise and worship, but I've written, my first album was I was clearly instructed to write to different themes and topics. There's a song I wrote to welcome a newborn baby into the world. You know, the song I wrote about, that song Special talks about diversity, the beauty in our diversity. So I kind of use that album to talk to different themes. And if anyone's listening or watching, you can actually go and listen to it. I think that in a way is an answer to your questions. I have used my gift to kind of speak to that without saying Black power or whatever. I've literally highlighted the beauty in our diversity, because the truth is, God has a sense of humor. Sometimes when I was a kid, I used to wonder, why did he make us so different? Literally, it's like, why did he make us so different? And it's because he wants us to see the beauty in our diversity and then draw together and work together, whether that's a utopia. Because I sometimes ask on my panel, do we think this is an unachievable feat to actually come together in spite of our differences? Because I feel like one of the reasons God has made us different is so that we can appreciate the differences that we have and pull together and work together as one human race, because that's really what we are. I was watching a movie or something the other day, and it was just a standard movie, you know, and friends, not the comedy Friends, like two friends in the movie of different racial backgrounds, and the girl was black, the guy was white, and the guy had recently gone through some kind of trauma. And you could feel, you know, when you're a good actor, you can feel the emotions of the guy who was, you know, heartbroken, and his friend who was a female black, and she hugged him, and I just saw, and this is something that was not in the movie, but I just saw the red blood flowing through the girl who was black and the red blood flowing through the guy who was white. And I just said, this is what humanity is about. It's about somebody suffering and the other person is there for them. It's not like, oh, he's white or he's black. It's like, our blood is red. We are the same being. We have the same essence. We are all created in the image of God. I know probably David doesn't want to hear no Greek, no Jew, but that's the reality. And I think we need to get to the point where that's what we see. But in response to your question, I have used my gifting, I have used my creativity, and where I can, I share the truth on situations. I don't just jump on and share some blind opinions. I try and make it based on facts.
Nice.
Yeah. Just on the back of that, Sarah, and again, I have heard in fact, I think you performed that song at Gospel Central. We need to invite you back up for 316, by the way. Just saying.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing.
And we'll do that as well. But there's something, and Roger knows my heart on this. There's something about music, and particularly gospel music, or music in general, that actually sits in a space where church, politicians, society in general, it has its own space. And I think it's underused. And part of my vision is to see music galvanize our community. Because I think when Marvin Gaye says what's going on, and Teddy Pendergrass says wake up everybody, and then you've got Stevie Wonder talking about superstition and stuff like that. I think those are the songs that are sort of timely. And we've got numerous artists at the moment. We've got Paul Gray with his Butterfly. Just really, if gospel artists were just to find it within themselves, which, you know, I'm happy to facilitate any of that. Use their music to tell their story. In the new digital sort of space and the new digital platforms that we have now, which we can globally connect, I think that we'll see, you know, that could become the catalyst for change for me, because the change that we're wanting to see is going to be ongoing. So again, I applaud you, Roger. Keep this kind of conversation going in amongst the music. People like myself and Dave will strategically placed. We will keep knocking at the door at policy, because God has given us that ability, and we sit in those spaces and we're not frightened. I think it was Sarah said that she went into a room where she was the only person of color in the room. I'm sure Dave will tell you that is almost our daily experience, especially when we're pitching for ideas, when we're pitching for change, and you're sitting in front of a boardroom. Nobody looks like you. You better know that you've got your act together in terms of performance. And actually, you see this as actually the reason why you're there and you're getting in there. Because if we change it for ourselves, we'll change it for everyone. And that's the point about, you know, there's a leadership discussion that sometimes just doesn't happen. To whom much is given, much is required. So we need to step out in faith and do what we're doing. And if we get it right for ourselves, or our communities, to use that term, we get it right for everyone. Whether it's the white guy down in, I don't know, some of the working class experiences, their communities are having similar experience to us. And if we get it right for us, we'll get it right for them too. Some of the women and the challenges that some of our women are experiencing, we need to step up and lead some of this discussion. And that's where we're going to see transformation happen.
All right, no, that's great, and it's like and it's like we have to be intentional, as he says, Beresford, you know, in what we do. You know, when I put on an event, I have to have an intent. You have an intention of how where artists fit and what they're communicating through their music. Now, Dave slightly mentioned. I want to really kind of like look at the gospel music sector a bit. I know Dave has a bit of chip on his shoulder about it, and it'd be interesting if we can check that chip, because it's well, like, you know. it's really a funny dynamic here because you got like Sarah, who's a singer, Beresford, who's a promoter, manager, experiences there, and it seems to be, I said the other day, we haven't got enough. The exercising of real writing skills within in black gospel Christian music has not been exercised to its max ability. But I know we've got writers that grew up in our communities that are writing for non-Christian artists, which is great. Do you think? You know what I mean? But we're almost, we can't say that. We can't say this. We can't say that. We're gonna do it like this. We always have to fit a certain box. And we said we try to be popular, we try to make hits, yeah? You know what I'm saying? And I understand you gotta put something together and be cute about it, yeah? But right about now, I love artists like Toby, I'm gonna say his name right, Toby Nigwe, yeah? So Lady T takes me care to how I say his name. I was saying the Wingate for years, but it's Nigwe, yeah? And his angles very cultural, you know what I'm saying, very this is where I'm coming from, this is where I'm going, I'm not afraid of my black hair, I might look offensive to you, my gold teeth, but it's inspired by God, and just very aggressive about it. There's another artist called D1 who actually did a track called Racist Christians and called out Christians on his track called Racist Christians, and he's standing up and saying, listen, this is where I'm coming from, this is what I'm saying. Now, I don't know if Dave was having a dig at Christian music, man, but it'd be interesting to hear your little angle on this. I know we're doing systemic racism, guys, but I think it's important for us to recognize it does manifest with the fact that basically, for me, black Christian artists are not as big as they should be in the UK. Full stop. That's just me. But anyway.
There's a number of ways I could look at this and talk about things, but music generally should provide a catalyst, a gathering point for people to come together, right? I think that's why God created it and gave it to us. Mm-hmm. Now, coming from an African perspective, when we put the drum in there as well, there is something that happens to us that mobilizes us and brings us together. The problem part of the problem I have, I like Summerhill's song, but as a genre as a whole, it's very individual. It's very, it's about me and Jesus, how I feel, my relationship with him. It's more, it's that love story aspect of it, rather than, do you know what? We're in a battle and a war. We need to go fight. Okay? Right. And I think that's where I'm coming from. We're in a battle. We need to fight. We need a rallying cry of the people of God. When we read in Exodus and various other parts of Scripture, who went first into the battle? The choir. Right, singing and leading the people of God to where they had to go to. And that's part of the role I see for our singers and our professionals. That's not to excuse the preachers and everybody else. I'm just dealing with the singers at the moment. They should be at the forefront of the battle cry, calling the people back to God, not to, so long as you feel all right, that's fine. And a bit of stereotypical, and I'm dealing with the extremes, right? But that's the problem for me is we need a rallying cry, a theme song, a theme tune to say, come on, people of God, this is what we're doing.
I think you're right to a degree, but I don't think we understand what the rallying cry is.
That's probably true. Yeah.
And I think if you were to ask musicians and singers how they feel about their institutions or their organizations or their churches, call it what you want, and their experience as musicians and worship leaders and worship singers, that's a whole different program. And I think until we make those things right or address them, I think you'll find that the worship leaders who are trying to be at the forefront, because some of them who were at the forefront were ostracized and feel isolated in their ministry. And I think until we try and respond to that in the way that we should, I think those people will happily be at the forefront, especially at this time. And when you talk about that radical cry, if you think about some of the productivity and some of the music that they are putting out, the church is saying, actually, no, we that's not us. So, there's a real comfort there, because there are some tunes and there are some songs that are really challenging the status quo and challenging society and challenging church. And all the church does was push them away even further. So I think Again, great conversation. I love it actually.
Yeah.
But I think music is really
important.
going to be the thing that galvanizes our communities. Go on, Sarah.
I was just going to say, in terms of you lost it.
I was like, this wasn't me. It's not my purpose, just blame it on Dave.
In terms of the Black Christian or gospel musicians' experience in the UK, there's a very wide spectrum. And the reason there's a wide spectrum is because we don't sing one kind of song, we don't sing one kind of style, we don't sing one kind of genre. And we're not all from the same place, right? So we've got the Caribbeans, we've got the Nigerians, we've got the Ghanaians, you've got, even within the Caribbeans, you've got different sounds, right? You've got those who focus on the worship, you've got those who focus on rap, those who focus on reggae. Even in that space alone, there's already a variety. And for us, it's great because Africa is a continent of diversity, of variety, of color, of the beauty of different rhythms and styles and sounds. So we just take everything and we enjoy everything. However, we're a minority in the UK. So the majority of people who would consume music are actually white, or should I say non-blacks, across the entire country of the United Kingdom. So the question we should ask ourselves is, I don't know why you're shaking your head, but the question we should ask ourselves is, what is our ambition? What is our objective as artists individually now? So yes, we have the bigger picture that we're looking at, which is we want to get our sound out there, but we need to bring it down, bring it home. What is our individual objective as artists? If my goal, for example, is to reach the wider Christian community with my music, and then I need to think about my audience, and that's something I had to come to terms with when I started out, because I have a particular way that I like to write and I like to express myself, and I realized that I would probably be the only one consuming my music if I only stuck to that, because that might not be the wider audience's cup of tea, right? But if I was the artist who couldn't care less, and I'm like, this is what I'm going to do, I don't care if I only sell 5 albums, this is what I want to pursue, that's all well and good. We respect that kind of vision and drive, if that is really what you've been called to do and set aside to do. But if you want to be somebody who takes the not just the gospel, but the Black sound, the Black experience, Black music, Black expression outside of our space and take it to another dimension, i.e. outside of the Black space, the first thing we need to do is learn from those who've done the same. And so I tend to study and I tend to watch people from the sidelines, Christians and non-Christians. Michael Jackson is a good example. Whitney Houston is another good example. Bob Marley is another good example of people who took very Black music. Well, I don't say very Black, but music that starts from a Black place.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, white people are loving and enjoying it. What did they do differently that we can learn from without compromising the integrity of our sound, our style, and our message? And so that is the kind of mindset that I have, and because I know that my one of my objectives is to take my music and take the message outside of our space, because the truth is our space is quite small. So we can complain about our music not going far, but then are we putting it in such a state that it can actually go farther than our little bubble, if you could call it that? So that is the kind of stance that I have. It's not the most popular, but I think it's one of the most realistic ways that we can look at things, because that's partly how we can actually grow and expand. And sometimes it's not very, tasty pill to swallow, but it is what it is, I guess.
No, I was shaking my, Sarah, I think we agree. So I was shaking my head, and again, it's body language. It was sweet to my ears. That's what it was. So I was, it was a sweet thing. So the point that you make is crucial. Actually, music is, if it's amazing music, everyone will listen to it. I don't think when Marley was doing his thing, he wasn't thinking about, this is for my people. He was just thinking, this is just beautiful music. When Whitney's doing her thing, someone knew how to commercialize it, which is different. But the music, as Bob says, when it hits you, you feel no pain. That's the point. It's not interested in the politics. It's not interested in church. It's about how can we connect with people. And that's why Roger will know, this is my mantra. Music will galvanize people if it's used right. It's one of the most powerful tools, or one of the most powerful assets we have. It shouldn't be for this person over here or this person over here. And yes, there's the music of Black origin, and we can debate that all day long, but actually it's the most commercial product in the world.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Simple thing. It's that's just the truth.
Mm-mm-mm.
And we just have to recognize that in terms of commodity, in terms of assets. If we look at music as an example, it crosses all cultures, all divides, everything. And why is the church missing that point when most of it has come out of there? Hello?
Sarah, was it on your program when we were talking about Sinach?
Yes, it was. Yes.
Yeah.
See, just to combine the two themes that we've got at the moment, there was a classic case of institutional racism in the church, right? A beautiful song that nobody would have heard outside of Africa. Unfortunately, or fortunately, a white guy went down and did some work, right? But because it came out of Africa, nobody would have heard it. If Hillsong would have written that song and sung it, everybody would have heard it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Classic.
But
And Elvis we know is the same. Who else? Jim Reeves, they done all the same. It's there. It's a historical problem.
But the thing is, I mentioned, let's go to the Snatch scenario, yeah, because it sounded good when the Les said, like, you know, we sent a song to other people to sing the song to the Americans, and I want to go back to what. But is it the fact that basically people can't consume songs unless it's on a mass level, it's done by a white person within the church? Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And if I'm just putting it out there because the song blew up with other people singing the track, but it was big before. But is it a case that to get it to the masses in America, was that the move? Why couldn't they bring the artist to America and to sing it out there? They bring Darling Check to the UK and she sings her tunes. So why couldn't they lift up Sinach and take her to America to tour that thing? Is that just she wouldn't have been as popular? Because
Well, I'd say to the question though.
I'm just putting it out there. Sorry.
No. But to the question about can a song not be, you know, blow or be a massive global hit if it wasn't done by a white person? A lot of Kirk Franklin songs are hits, and to be fair, he's strategic though. He does feature a lot of whites on his projects, I have to say. And that's the thing about what I said earlier. You need to know how to break past the barrier and push beyond the limit.
Leadership, man. Leadership.
And that is the so so now to answer your question, I didn't even intend for my answer to go there, but my answer having cited Kirk Franklin kind of shows that in a way you do need to have these people in your boat, in your team, because I don't know that if Kirk Franklin ever only featured black people on his projects, he'd go as far as he's gone.
But then his first two albums,
it's strategy.
It's strategy. Why it's intentional
and leadership.
Yeah,
it's still his music. It's strategy and it's leadership. And I think that's why I'm saying there's something about leadership in this whole discussion, whether it be institutional racism or music or whatever it is. There's a leadership that we're not investing in enough in terms of our delivery and the messages and the principles that we're trying to put across in our communities. That's missing.
Okay, I'll use another example as well. Black Panther. Okay, how many decades were we told nobody wants a black movie, right? And then what happened? Blockbuster. But again, just bringing things up to a modern time and what the church can learn from some of this stuff, right? Up until the explosion of the internet, Hollywood controlled most of the movie industry, and they exported a certain image around the world. Now what's happened? We've got Netflix. Suddenly there's a lot of competition. We've got Bollywood. We've got Nollywood. These things were underground for a long time and doing their niche things. And now they're as big, if not bigger, than Hollywood. So if the church doesn't learn that it needs to adapt and listen to different models and different ways of doing things, like, you know, Beresford just said, it's about being strategic and having good leadership to say, actually, what's the next step? Where's the world going? What's the world need? And then adapting our message, the gospel message, which hasn't changed, so that it is more palatable to them. You know, so yes, we have to be strategic still. The essence of the message hasn't changed, but our mechanism for delivering it must.
100%, man. And just going back to the report, if we're not careful, the report will become a distraction, and all our energies and all our efforts. And I know people are already saying it's not just back 20 years, but actually You know, if you jump on that, there'll be another set of reports. You know, you think about how much it costs to put that report together in terms of commission and money invested. It become a distraction. And some of the issues that we are talking about here, imagine investing in that, for example, and even some of the ideas shared in this space, and you present them in a certain way and they were commissioned, and that money and that investment, just imagine how much impact that would have on our communities.
Massive. And I do think, guys, I know we're coming to the close. Yeah, what's beautiful, we kind of segued, you know, me over to, and that's not why you came here, Sarah. You know, segue into talk, but it's important because I feel that music has a very important role, and I do say for Black people. When I was younger, I saw a lot of positive music in the 80s and you know what I mean, and 90s. But what I saw is what was being given to me, has been as a Black man, it's just pure negative. We just, you know, we it's two perspective. We either and it almost stereotypes us, because people are like, well, I see what you guys do on MTV or One Xtra, and the focal point is on that, and it's not, we're not all like that, Black men, and it's very, you know what I'm saying, and it's very frustrating for me as a Black man, where we purely portrayed, but I see other men, other cultures are not portrayed that way through music. We just, I mean, the biggest thing was you had the Black family in the Tesco advert. People actually complained, said they're not going to go back to Tesco's, abused her, but yet at the same time, Snoop Dogg was in his advert with Just Eat as a gangster rapper, and everybody's cool. No one complains about that, but yet they complain about seeing what I have seen all my life, going to Christmas as a Black family and everyone's together, and they're saying that insults them. They want to see a Black man rapping with two women on a bed, Black women, you know what I mean? Well, which way of call, but
however number,
whatever number. But that's the perception that's brought to me. So music is important, and the rise of Black Christian music is important because our voice has to dominate. I'm sick of us doing BVs for these guys. I want us to be in the front, but that's just me to say. But anyway, Sarah, sorry, because I see you got your unmuted mic. But anyway, that just bugs me off. But anyway,
don't even get me started with the BVing thing. That is my pet peeve.
Okay,
literally.
Cool. Okay.
But I think in terms of the stereotypes that have been created, the Christian sound has been silenced from the mainstream, rightly or wrongly. Because in my opinion, Governor B is one of the best rappers in the country, full stop. How many non-Christian radio stations would play his music compared to like a Stormzy or whoever else is making all those gangster sounds, which I don't really know their names, to be fair. There's another guy, a Slim Shady or something.
Yeah, Slim
UK
Shady.
Guy.
Yeah.
He is phenomenal. Some people mistake him for Stormzy.
Still Shady. Yeah.
How good he is. How many non-Christian radio stations would play him on rotation? So for some reason, it's like there is a deliberate attempt to actually not even encourage positive, inspirational messages that young people need to hear. If you're singing about drugs and all of that, then they're happy, sex and gang violence and things like that. They're happy to play your music. So it's not like the Christian space. I mean, some people frown at rap, Christian rap or Christian grime. Yeah. We're trying, I don't do that. I don't do rap music, but I would defend those guys because they're providing an alternative to these young people who like that sound. But even the platforms that should at least air that music with a positive message would not support it. So it feels like you're punching in the dark here as a Christian artist in terms of just that message going outside of Christian places. I mean, when I get new songs, I try and send them to BBC, I try and send them to wherever. The chances of me getting played are next to zilch because, you know, my message is about Jesus Christ, is about positivity. And even the first and second album, which I produced, which were mainly kind of crossover in their style and their messaging, they kind of got a few, but they wouldn't be on rotation perpetually. But if I was singing R&B and soul and I was half naked as a Black woman, they'll embrace me with every appendage that they have. So it just goes down to, and these are not just necessarily white people. These are very much our own people who would much rather put that out there. So that is, for me, a very frustrating issue. And I know we've run out of time, but that's something probably you want to explore in the next, if you're having another one. Is what can we do to address this? Because it feels like it's out of our control. We don't pull the strings in those, those institutions, those establishments. but there is, whether it's a deliberate or an unspoken rule against not necessarily encouraging or putting out our sound and our message. Someone like Philippa Anna, I was at a gig of hers one day, and she talked about how a presenter on radio dissed her music. That's white on white even. And that was a non-Christian platform, because obviously she's coming with a Christian message. So it's not just even against us blacks, it's just against the view, that the worldview that we hold, which is different from the worldview that they hold. You know, take Lil Nas X's new song, for example. That has had over 4 million, in 24 hours it had over 4 million views. And this is a video that literally shows him and the devil having a lap dance. 500,000 people liked that video in 24 hours on YouTube. These are the things our society embraces. So it's a whole different kettle of fish in terms of we having a voice, you know, because we are singing and speaking about the truth, but it's being silenced at a phenomenal level out there. But I'll kind of leave it there. That's a whole different topic.
Oh, that's definitely crazy. But what my little cheeky response to that would be a case of, why isn't Premier, why isn't UCB, why isn't the major voices for Christian music celebrating on a bigger level black music and rotation on them? Because we have to get it right in our own camp. As we go back, we talk about, as Christians, we talk about institutional racism. And Beresford raised the point, our churches, just look at our churches. It's just I said to my friend, you can go to New York now. My friend talks, and you have the Guyanese church, you have the Jamaican church, you have all the cultural different churches. You know, you got churches representing all these different cultures, and we all separate. But then come Monday, we're both working in McDonald's together, like everything's cool, like, yeah, right, Brendan, you're my best friend, yeah, we're Christians, and it's really a pact. It's something that I would love to unpack definitely another time. But you raised a valid point there, Sarah, and I think it's important that, you know, how do we get our artists out there? There's a lot of more strategies out there. Again, we talk about racism and systemic racism, and it's important for us to identify where we see it, and where we see is the unproductivity of Christian black music, and we want to see Sarah go platinum. How does Sarah go platinum? You know what I mean? You can, a few brown envelopes to Roger. I won't say no. I see what I can do. You know, but you know, we need to realize as a community, we can't be individualistic in what we do. We need to come together and galvanize to get over this hurdle. It is a hill. We talked today about issues in our things. It's a hill we're going across, and we can overcome. But we need to have strategic, as mentioned today, think about it. And it's important when we get it right, because we all go into our workplaces trying to get it right. We'll go back to church and it isn't right. That's what hurts. You know what I mean? It just hurts. And then people say, oh, it is. We'll go into heaven. But if I had a daughter, my daughter would be 5 times likely to die in childbirth than my brother next to me who's white. Why is that? By accident or by design? You know what I mean? And that's a fact. And that hurts. But when I heard that fact, that broke my heart. Because I'm thinking in 2020, that is a fact. Why is it that we are almost 10 times likely to be stopped by, you know what I mean, getting cautions, getting stuff, struggling, and our young boys are not getting jobs and straight away can't get no jobs now, yeah, because they get marginalized so young. Yeah, but yet other communities, they get away with doing absolute madness. Yes, the police copper got caught this week, and he for being neo-Nazi. I'm like, yo, 40, 50 years too late, mate. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? But you know, great sentiment. You know, thumbs up. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, what, like, yeah, how you been treated? But I just want to have a closing comment about from everybody, because I think a key thing, we can't create solution, but we want to create questions to really get people thinking. So I just want to Sarah did a beautiful question out there. It's got me thinking now for the who do I get for that one? We get myself in trouble there. But Dave, I want to start off with yourself. You know, when I talk about, you know, we spoke about, okay, let's read this report properly. We talk about the dark room experience that you experienced, like me, going to the dark room and just eating loads of stuff and just to get through comfort eating. But just hit me back about how the next step looks like to you with your systemic racism. What's your vibe? What are you going to be doing?
Beresford made the point earlier, and I would echo that point, is don't allow this to be a distraction. Okay?
Yeah.
Because whiteness, one of its primary tactics is divide and conquer. Right, and we see that even in the church, we see that as well. If I can't have the power, you're definitely not going to have it. Right, that's where it comes from. So therefore, we have to work all the more harder now to unite, to get that common sound, message, whatever it is. And it's going to be tough. And this is my opinion, and hopefully I'm wrong in this, but I think the bulk of the work is going to be to the upcoming generation, not to the ones who are currently in position. And I think COVID has repositioned a lot of things, a lot of energy, a lot of focus now. So I think, and I said this, I think in that forum, if not another one, is Black Lives Matter has demonstrated a number of factors the church can learn in how it interacts with younger people, how it engages with the politics that surrounds us, because we're all engaged in politics, whether we like it or not. So really it is, we are a work of faith created by God. We should be the world changers. How are we going to do that, people?
Come on. Yep. That's good. Sarah, I'm going to do yourself. I'm going to go to Beresford to finish off for you. No pressure.
Yeah, I think, no worries. Thank you. And thank you so much for having me on this panel as well. I hope
bless, man.
It's been useful, because I found it really useful and informative. I think in terms of final words, I'd say we need to educate ourselves. We need to educate our children. We need to empower our children. And in terms of our churches, because the church itself is very divided, and that makes it very challenging to just come together and unite against this evil, which is racism, whether it's systemic, overt, or subtle. And I feel like we need to be very deliberate about coming together as the body of Christ. And when you were talking about strategic leadership, I was just saying to myself, where exactly would that be? Because I feel like that's an open question. Where is this leadership going to be? Who's assuming this position? Who are the people who would be making these decisions? Because the body is actually divided. And I think that's where the enemy almost has an upper hand. So if there's anything that I'd say to people who are listening, who may be church leaders, ministers, or in positions of power or influence within the church, is we need to be united as the body first. You can't fight a battle if you're going in different directions and the enemy's coming to you from one point. It's already a lost battle. And I feel like in that regard, we need to really address the division within the church, whether it's the quote unquote white and black, or African and Afro-Caribbean. There's so many different, as you say, Roger, subsets, I'd like to call it, within the church. And we need to come together. We need to realize that we're first and foremost one body, and then we can start looking at the things that are attacking us and having a clear strategy on how to address those. Until we get to that point, I'm afraid that we'll keep on having these cycles. Sadly, that's just the reality.
Wow. Yeah.
But I mean, in the meantime, what we can do is carry on educating ourselves, educating the next generation, and working closely with our leaders in our local churches and our communities to highlight the things that they can do to be more intentional about closing the gap in the racial divide within our churches and our Christian communities.
Cool. You can write a new song for us tonight. No pressure, man. No, thanks again, sis, man. Appreciate that 100%. Beresford, you want to close up?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much to say. I think the first thing to say is when the report, going back to the report, if we start with that, when we think that all that's been said, and when I look at Affinity Radio as an example, because sometimes we overlook the very obvious things that are staring us in our face. So when we talk about institutional racism and systemic racism, we still have an example of a radio station that is black-led, 24 hours. So against all the odds, how have we managed to create this situation? There is your answer. So how do we model this across the country? And that's where we should be trying to articulate that. Because you can say, yeah, there's institutional racism. However, over here's an example of how you manage in this very complex society that we live in. So that's one of the things I would say. So there are several examples and several models across the country that we should be holding up and saying, here is an example of how we can move forward as a people. I think the other thing I would say is we need to use more spaces like this to have the conversations. And I think the COVID or the pandemic and the use of digital platforms is a space where we should be operating to have the conversation.
Good.
Because this has been a very informative, operational, let's say.
Yeah.
This is what it could feel like on the ground if we start having a conversation, because that's where the transition needs to happen. I think also Sarah's point and my own point as well about leadership, that if we're looking at where the dialogue needs to happen and is happening. I remember when this time last year, when at least 25 of my close friends and colleagues passed in the midst of the pandemic. I couldn't find a place of refuge. My place of worship wasn't the space. Certainly my workspace wasn't the space. And I was wrestling with just me and God about what is this, what's going on? And over the time, I've found that theology college has been the space where the conversation has been one of rich, safe, but also intelligent in terms of the conversation. So again, even now, we're still saying that our places of worship hasn't really got to grips with this. And that for me is really discomforting.
Yeah.
So therefore, in the resetting, as Dave has described it, there's clearly something else happening, which we need to be wise enough and also critical enough to accept that there's a shift and there's a change. And in that shift and the change, the church, as we know it, is going to look very different. And I think some of that discussion, and I'm challenging the theology college that I'm at to take some of the lead on this, as even though I'm a student, but in terms of their makeup of lecturers and the liturgy and all of that space is quite an intelligent space and a critical space to help communities with this discussion. And needless to say, for me, music is at the heart of some of that. And I'm proud, certainly in the space that I'm operating in, that's going to be a space where we can use to galvanize our community. So just again, kudos to yourself as a younger person in the space. I think people want to see models of good practice, to use that corporate term. And if we have models of good practice, we can see the future and you say, actually, that's what it looks like. I want to mimic that, or I want to model that. Then that's what we should be doing in my own.
100%. Setting that example. That's what I'm saying. That's blessed, bro. Absolutely blessed. Now, guys, I appreciate today. I just want to do shameless plug. I have to big up 316 showcase. Yo, guys, definitely, guys, if you want to, we gotta support each other. Definitely, it's gonna be live. Go to put 316 Gospel in your search engines wherever you are, Instagram, but it's gonna be live on YouTube and Facebook. It's gonna be live on the 4th on Easter Sunday. So if you want to chill out with the family and watch some good gospel things, sit down and enjoy that experience. And I believe it is at 7 p.m. Yep, 7 p.m. So got my times right there, 100%. And was like is it Beresford?
I didn't even pay him to say that, so thank you. Roger. No. After big up. And also, guys, watch out for Sarah as well. She's bringing out a number of singles. I wish I had a bit more baseline, but I got Afrobeats. She got Afrobeats one coming up for me anyway. Still, yeah. Is that correct, sis?
Oh, okay. But anyway, so we check out.
No, it will come out with the album in July. The
oh,
Afrobeat track will come out with the album
Oh,
in July.
July's around the corner, man. So when we're free and everyone wants to party outside, we'll be out there. So and we just started the beginning of negotiations of Sarah Téibo finishing performing on one of the 316 showcase platforms. We believe that will happen by the end of this year. So that we just leave negotiations to happen off air anyway. Yeah. But Dave, thanks again for your time, and I appreciate everyone that's jumped in.
I'd say this as well. Please pray for, like, myself and Dave, that we're in with certain positions within the NHS specifically. I think our experience means that, it's a challenge. We're not afraid of the situations that we are in, but the more people praying for us in terms of how we operate operationally and strategically, I think it's really important. So, again, that's important to say, that people who are praying, there are several people across the country in our strategic positions, and the leadership that we talked about help us to walk in that with confidence.
Cool.
So just keep praying into that.
No, brilliant. That's fantastic, man. So, guys, thanks again for jumping in. And listen, thanks again, and take care. And I appreciate your time this afternoon after a very heartfelt, up and down emotional week. Man, we had from Derek Jackson to Kurt Franklin to a little Nas. I'm like, what's next week, man? I just want to get past Easter Sunday, and I just want an easy week. But I know it's not gonna happen. We're gonna have another disaster for watchers to chat about, man, next week. So listen, guys, enough love. And thanks again for jumping on there. I'm going to play a bit of DJ Khaled in Church on the Moon just to vibe out of this. But thanks again, guys, man. Bless you, man.
Thank you.
Today is a celebration. We've lived to see the church reach new heights. We dedicate.
Visit us for updates and shows at affinityextra.co.uk.